Hi, I'm Dr. Tuepenz,
And I'm Gaplord.
and we are the Juice Crew Villans.
We can see the layers to the equations of the day. At first glance, you might misjudge a place or thing, then come to a different conclusion at a later.
Good day, my fellow Americans. It's me, Gaplord, your friend extraordinaire. And today we come to you with a very, very interesting topic. And we would like to discuss, where did the saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," come from? And does it? Does it take a village to raise a child? Today, we will start this topic off by getting Dr. Tuepenz's opinion. And I would like to first ask Dr. Tuepenz, what's a village?
I don't know the technical definition, but going off the top of my head, I would say it's a place that's similar to a community. It's a place where people live with families, and they do business, goods and services, things of that nature.
I would agree. I was going to add is I would just refer to a village as a community.
Right.
So what is a community?
A community is a place where people live residentially, family units, single people, so on and so forth. Businesses exist there that offer the community goods and services to get to their daily life.
So let me give you the exact definition. A community is a group of people living in the same area or having a particular characteristic in common. And a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. So now I asked you a more particular question. What is a black community?
Ooh-wee. Man, I guess based off that definition, and
Well, let me ask, what does a black community look like?
what does a black community look like? If I close my eyes and say it was a black community, I would open my eyes and I would say menace to society.
Let me put it.
Something like that. Not everywhere, of course, but, because that's a prominent portion of black culture, which is a key characteristic. You know what I'm saying?
I asked what a black community is like. I've only heard black community says it takes a village to raise a child. So I feel like that's something that black culture says.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I asked specifically, what is a black community? And you say it would look something like menace to society.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Shit. Crime, drug selling, everything a rap video. Everything, if you want to know what the black community look like, turn on a rap video and you see somebody out there acting out what's really happening in the black community.
I mean, I would say some because, it's
of course
black
some
suburban communities.
Right. It's just some, not all. And even some of the more poor areas, they may have poverty, but some might not be as, violent and a lot of crime and stuff like that. Maybe, some fist fights every once in a while, a little vandalism, a little dope selling. But nobody's shooting it up every day. You don't have large groups of, gangs on each, in little areas and stuff like that. So
okay, so now let's get into it. What can a community offer to your child? Like good, positive. Good
it can offer positive. It can offer positive things. But I mean, it's hard for me to even answer that question without looking at the reality of it. Just like, you are your community when it comes to your children. You know what I'm saying? And you have to establish, guidelines before they even get out into the outside world. I think the community can help your children by giving them lessons of what not to do and what to do. You can look at people who are successful in your community, and you can look at people who are not successful in your community, and you can make decisions, based off of what you see them doing, using the information, and also using the information that's been given to them from their parents. But ultimately, I think it all comes down to, it could be, the village, it could be helpful, but I don't think it's,
Well, are there a lot of successful people in these villages that we speak of?
No.
So how would one look up to the successful people if they're hard to find?
You won't. And that's when you gotta learn, and that's when you gotta teach to look at yourself. I think self-love is something that, you know what I'm saying, isn't talked about like in homes, parents and families. How teaching kids how to love themselves. Like, you know, saying it takes the village to raise the children is just like saying, well, if you have a kid and you don't have a village to raise that child, then you're gonna fail as a parent, and that child is gonna fail ultimately as well. So saying that is putting yourself in a mental box, prison, chamber, whatever you want to call it, and thinking that that's what you need to be a successful parent is, I think that's incorrect thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you answered one of my next questions in your statement, and it was going to be, should a child be raised by their parents or the community? And which I would agree that parents should be raising the child, not the community that they're surrounded in. There's a saying that says, be in the world, not of it. And I think that directly correlates to that. As growing up, I remember black people saying that all the time, and I never understood it even as a kid. And it's like, why would they want these people raising us? And it's like, they bad people. So it was always confusing to me. I didn't want any outside influence of my home raising my children. I don't want them to become a product of their environment. And that's why it doesn't produce or yield great results. And as a parent, we're supposed to protect our children and make sure they're getting the resources that they need. I know back in the day, you know how they used to be like, well, I know my family at least, they used to be like, well, if we was out there doing something bad, the neighbor will whoop our butt or something.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, like, ain't nobody touching my kids.
Right.
Ain't nobody whooping my kids out. My neighbor's not touching my kids. They can't go in my neighbor's house. They can't do none of that. They are not helping me raise my children based off of their tainted lives and traumatic life experiences. That's all they're doing. Your kids are basically getting traumatic experiences from everybody in the neighborhood. When you let a community raise your kids,
man,
you got 30
that's deep,
houses putting on traumatic experiences onto your child.
We want to deal with that. And it go back to what you were saying, because I was going to the point I was going to say something about that. Just that's how I used to be. You know, I grew up in when we stayed in Chaparral. It was kind of like that. People will whoop you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they whoopings wasn't worse than my mama whoopings. And it wasn't like no savage beating. It was a couple licks. You know what I'm saying? But now, like you said, people are traumatized. It's a lot more trauma in the communities now, because during that time, that was like the crack era. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know.
Kids whooping your kids.
Yeah, so in the 90s, that stuff is not applicable anymore, because you got people who are super traumatized because they came out the crack era. Their parents is on crack. They probably a crack baby. Somebody they know is probably murdered in front. Ain't no telling what didn't happen to them in the 80s, and now they grown-ups and they abusing their kids, and now they are now abusing your kids. And then even in the 90s, you know, I'm not gonna go too deep into a tangent, but you know, all forms of, like a lot of forms, I'm not gonna say all forms of accountability, you know, were diminished, but a lot of forms of accountability and just too many freedoms have, you know, started to become given to children. The discipline started to become out, you know, leave the home, and parents were beginning to be replaced by televisions, like, you know, cable TV and stuff. I would say first it was the radio, because they used to be big on our parents about their music. Then color TV got everybody. Then cable TV got everybody. And of course now the internet and cell phones got everybody. But you know, that's a tangent. And I'm gonna stop there on my woke shit.
Yeah, but cell phones and social media has become the community these days. Yeah, the village.
And parents.
Yeah, that's the village now.
It's the parents. How many parents we see just pop their kid hurt? We pull up somewhere, we doing something, they give that kid a phone, that kid sits there and look at their phone for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and then wonder why.
Yeah, just like the video I showed you earlier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's so not to just be all negative on the community or the village per se, but there are positive things I do think we can get from the community, but it isn't raising your child. I think that you can learn to fellowship and be sociable within your community, like an understanding that there's differences within all these groups of people living in that community, because no matter if the community is all black, it's still a diverse community, because all these households grew up differently and they have different rules and everything and belief systems. So it's still a diverse community. Diverse doesn't mean just color. So that's the only positive thing I think that we get out of having a community is allowing your kids to experience it, but don't let them be a part of it.
But do you know, like you said, I mean, I think it helps, but you know, they raised Dora the Explorer out in the jungle. And she's a really good kid. You know, she turned out to be real good when she got to high school. She wasn't influenced by none of the peer pressure. They couldn't bully her with the words. The cool kids couldn't get to her. You know, she had a different type of mental temperament. Some of y'all probably need to take y'all kids and do the same thing to raise them in the woods.
Yeah, I think when I ask this question, it's like I think about my community where I was raised. And I wasn't raised in, Compton or Chicago.
Of course, yeah.
So, East Side Oklahoma City is not on the list of the top worst.
The East Side Oklahoma City isn't worse than the South Side Oklahoma City.
No.
And, we just get the bad rep because it's rap music.
Yeah, but it was some stuff that went on in my neighborhood that I don't allow. There's no way I would allow my kids to be around some of these things growing up. Now, as an adult, it's like, it's ridiculous that I would think to be like, oh, that's okay, my kids see this and be around this. And it's funny because some people will be like, you're sheltering your kids. It's like, no, I'm protecting my kids. But it's always very interesting. My take on it, don't let a village raise anything but their household. Your parents, two-parent household is responsible for raising the child. And I think the reason why there's so many crazy, confused children that become adults is because the village is raising them.
Right. And, instead of letting the village raise your kids, what you should do is subscribe, like, and comment on this video. Share it with your people. By doing that, everybody else will take proactive steps to raising their children and stop letting the village confuse them.
Yeah, we ain't in Africa. There ain't no villages.
It's a neighborhood.
5-5 crib.
But yeah, do what y'all want to do, though. Shit. Oh, man.
Back.
Manifesting the vibe, yeah, we feeling it. You wasting time, then you killing it. Life's too short, so we living it up. Pull up to the party with this drink in my cup. Don't fuck with nobody at that body, no. My trust only lies with the crew. Say I'm the truth, bully the hype. This ain't a movie, baby, this is my life. Baby, this is my life.
I've been rapping my whole life. I ain't been rapping that long. Life is short, my nigga. I couldn't write a verse in jail, couldn't get a vibe there. Surrounded by depression, no niggas in wheelchairs.
With the wrong side of the bread. Thought I made it by a landslide, but instead I'm still hungover. Sometimes I make the wrong phone call after dark. Sometimes I make the wrong turn, then I have to pause. I know exactly how this ends, but I have